We talked about Spurs quite a bit just recently, so we're going to move on and talk about their big London rivals, Arsenal, and lots of controversy there. Bit of whinging from Mikel Arteta, maybe justified, although not in Henry's opinion, as they drew 1-1 at Brighton. Henry, the big debate is the penalty, the head clash, inverted commas, which the pundits on the telly seem to think was fair enough as a penalty, but there's been a lot of adverse reaction, not the least from Tony Cascarino, who says not a penalty in a million years, but you say it is.
Yeah, it was interesting because you very rarely see that. I think there was one in the Celtic-Hibs game last year, but it is quite rare. But I just think if you look at it, you look at Anthony Taylor's positioning, you look at the time that, he gave himself a couple of seconds. Obviously, maybe there was some communication with the assistants. I mean, Arsenal were outraged, but some Brighton fans were saying, well, it's a headbutt. It's not a headbutt, but there is, in the words of the PGMO, when they were sort of explaining Taylor's reasonings, that there was sufficient contact for a penalty. And I think if that happens anywhere else on the pitch, it's a free kick. So why should it be a penalty? But he's got a touch on it, a slight touch on it with his head, which I didn't see immediately, I must admit. But he does get a little touch on it with his head. But then if you get a little touch on the ball with your foot in midfield and you take somebody out, it's still a foul. I mean, João Pedro went down. There was no simulation element. I mean, he was knocked off balance. So I didn't think it was an obvious mistake, and I think VAR quickly backed Taylor up. I mean, where Cass is, I would certainly agree with Cass, is there weren't huge protests from the Brighton players in terms of demanding a penalty. Jorginho is quite funny for Arsenal, who turns to João Pedro and gestures, get up. But obviously there was contact.
Cass is probably thinking he would have had a lot more penalties in his day if those had been given, because they wouldn't have been given in his day, would they?
They would not have been given in his day, and Cass would have just taken that sort of contact, sufficient contact, to quote PGMO, and just sort of carried on. But that's Cass's character.
But equally, the ones we get now where goalkeepers come out to punch and they catch a player's head, they are going down as penalties, and in the old days those wouldn't have been given either, would they?
So you're saying it's the right decision?
Well, I'm saying that there are differences now about contact with the head, which seems to lead to penalties.
At the risk of getting all Ange on you, what's your opinion?
What? I'm sort of with you, yeah. I think it probably was a penalty. And there are plenty of other people who are saying that too. But Arsenal have a real thing about that refs are out to get them. I mean, they really do, and they think there is I've seen a whole list of things this morning about various injustices, Declan Rice sending off, all of those sort of stuff, and they feel they've got a point.
You get this obviously with all fan bases. Obviously, it's tribal. You defend your club. You think everyone's out to get you. I mean, I think if you did a table of teams that have been wronged against, I think probably Wolves would be up there. I think Gary O'Neill would say that when he was there.
But that doesn't make it right in Arsenal fans' eyes.
No, absolutely, and that's the whole point, is that it is completely tribal. One thing I did notice, I wasn't at the game, just watching it on television, the amount of grappling at corners. I mean, it's just at some point they're going to have to sort of have an issue with it. It's not simply an Arsenal issue, but obviously they focus very strongly on set pieces. Whether their attacking players can actually reach the ball, whether they're being grappled out the way, or whether they're sort of trying to impede the keeper. I think what's interesting is that Brighton actually tried to play with a couple of players, push a couple of players up just to try and distract Arsenal. Didn't completely work.
What about the performance, though, in general? Is this hiding the fact that it wasn't a great Arsenal performance?
Well, it wasn't, and obviously they were missing. I mean, Odegaard came on, he's been ill. Kai Havertz didn't play. He was on the bench. Saka is out for a certain period. Martinelli didn't start. So you could argue that their first choice front four wasn't there. But I think it highlights the fact they still haven't got a centre forward. I mean, Gabriel Jesus, I understand that, what was it, sort of 6 goals in 5 now. He's obviously been scoring recently. But I think if you talk to any Arsenal fan, the majority of them have said we needed to buy a centre forward at the start of the season. And your beloved Isak, who your club's saying is worth £150 million.
No, and you said that was unfair, and you were getting battered for that after you were saying that last week. That's a bit too much money for Isak, you were saying last week. Well, we'll charge what we like, thanks.
No, the reason for that is, first, it's 150 million quid, and secondly, it's It will be an interesting medical. I mean, look, he's obviously fit, but they will look at his injury record.
When's this medical going to happen?
Well, according to you.
No, according to me, it's not going to happen.
Right. Well, why would you leave Newcastle now?
Well, exactly. But you're the one who said it was a bit too much money for him last time.
Yeah.
As I said to you, we'll charge what we want. We'll charge
what we want.
We'll charge what we want. Text in, good morning, guys. Paul and the mighty Finn on the way home to Cowan Bay after the Brighton Arsenal game yesterday. Penalty incident definitely contentious, but if we look at it in a different way, the way Arsenal wasted time in the first half was like nothing I've ever seen before.
Well, Nwaneri got booked taking a corner.
Oh, the corner was unbelievable, wasn't it? As they consulted with the coach on the touchline, then went over to decide how they should take the kick. And even when he got booked, he still took his time. I mean,
that would have been an interesting second yellow if he booked him again.
That certainly was. That was quite bizarre. But Arsenal not really doing enough, are they, to suggest they're title contenders?
But Nwaneri been excellent in the first half, and then I don't understand it. He didn't necessarily look injured, but obviously Arteta was saying he had to come off. Obviously, it wasn't for tactical reasons because he was playing well. So 1 minute he is a sort of semi-answer to Saka's absence, and then the next he's off. It's frustrating. They miss Ben White, they miss Timber. I also think they miss Lewis Skelly. I like him when he starts.
Yeah, he's good. There's no name on this one. Trust you guys to say it's a penalty. All ex-players said it was no pen. Well, they didn't all actually, but Saliba touches the ball. He's got his eyes on the ball. And Taylor takes his time looking at Pedro rolling around to make the decision. This will happen again, and it wouldn't be given. Just like all the second yellow cards you see for kicking the ball away. Look how many done that this weekend and didn't get a yellow.
Well, look, there's an argument for consistency, but I think in this incident, then Taylor, who, despite what a lot of fans say, he is in our top 2 referees with Michael Oliver. I mean, he's a good referee.
In your opinion, is this a league table?
Well, in terms
who decided that?
Well, ask FIFA. I mean, just look at the number of international games he gets given.
41 officials on the FIFA list. So I don't know. Is there a ranking order that says Anthony Taylor's second?
I think he's pretty high.
A few other games to look at quickly. Man City 4, West Ham 1. The crisis is over, although Pep Guardiola says they're not back to their old best, but they're through the choppy waters, don't you think?
Well, I mean, it's good to see Haaland scoring again from a Manchester City perspective. They're getting 1 or 2 players back. But my issue is more with West Ham. They didn't actually play that badly, but 4-1. I just don't understand where Lopetegui actually fits. He's not necessarily, certainly hasn't improved the results over David Moyes, who took them to a European glory. He hasn't necessarily improved the footballers. I mean, they've got some decent players there. Obviously, they're missing Bowen at the moment, but I thought Somerville had a decent game yesterday. Full Crook scored.
Kudus is a great player, I think,
but he's not really delivering. He got hooked in the second half.
So, I wonder what David Moyes was thinking as he sat there at the Etihad.
Do you think he was going full Neil Mopay?
But there is some almost. He must sit there with a certain amount of vindication in his mind, mustn't he? Thinking, look, what I did was pretty good with that team,
and it absolutely was. Do you bring Graham Potter in? And because Lopetegui, it just does not look like it's going to work. It looked a strange fit in the first place. You looked at his CV. Obviously, had a couple of good runs with decent clubs, but I just don't get it. And I think West Ham fans, I can understand their frustration.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.